Hi there, I'm Nathan. Somebody once said, there's no such thing as an irredeemable attraction. That someone was me, about 5 seconds ago. While that might be hard to believe, I'd argue that statement is quite true. And to prove it, today I'll be pitting it against one of the worst attractions of all time. With a 1.9 star rating on Google Maps and a 1.5 star rating on Yelp, this attraction is considered by many to be one of, if not the worst ride at its park. Countless hours have been spent on video essays and podcasts diving into just how much of an abomination this ride is. This ride is so terrible that the senior vice president of the company behind it called it, quote, the worst mistake of my career, end quote. And the audience reacted like this. If you couldn't tell by those statements, or by the title of this video, today I'm talking about the Fast and the Furious, Supercharged. Since its 2018 opening at Universal Studios Orlando, Supercharged has been universally panned by both critics and audiences alike. But is it really that bad of a ride? Okay. Am I still going to make an argument as to why Supercharged isn't that terrible, actually? Well, hop onto your party bus and get ready to turn down for what? Because today I'm offering up a mediocre defense of the Fast and the Furious, Supercharged.
There we go. Perfect. Alright.
Now, before we go any further, we need to clear some things up because there are two different versions of this attraction. The first, called The Fast and the Furious, Supercharged, opened in 2015 as the brand new finale to Universal's Hollywood Backlot Tram Tour. The second version, called The Fast and the Furious, Supercharged, opened in 2018 as a standalone attraction at Universal Studios Orlando. These two attractions are basically the same thing, but there are some major differences between them, besides their location on opposite coasts. Since I'm going to be focusing mainly on Orlando's version of Supercharged, I want to touch a bit on California's first, since it was the precursor, and is also the one that most people consider to be just okay. And just so everyone's aware, I'm not talking about the Fast and the Furious Extreme Close-Up, which opened as part of the Backlot Tram Tour in 2006 and closed in 2013. Because that ride is absolute perfection. There are two things that make California's version of Supercharged pretty decent. 3 Ds and blue seats. First off, this version exists as part of Universal's Hollywood Backlot Tram Tour. As such, it exists as one small part in an hour-long experience. So if you don't like Supercharged, there are other things on the tour that you'll probably enjoy. Additionally, the plot of the ride was designed specifically for the tram tour. And while it's still silly and convoluted, it does help to make a bit more sense. Second, Hollywood's version of Supercharged is in 3D. Now, that might not seem like a big thing, but that one extra D makes a huge difference. Literally. Instead of a 7-foot-tall vehicle identification number diesel holding onto a tiny helicopter, you get a regular-sized vehicle identification number diesel, still holding onto a tiny helicopter, but now he's actually close to you. While Hollywood's version of Supercharged isn't perfect, those two factors help it to work out incredibly well. It was perfectly designed for the tram tour, and the 3D effects help to make the experience actually enjoyable for guests. It's a real shame you can't say the same about Florida. When a segment from the Hollywood Tram Tour gets turned into a standalone attraction for Universal Studios Orlando, changes are usually made to give that attraction added depth. For example, Earthquake, the big one, got a pre-show and Christopher Walken, and was turned into Disaster, a major motion picture, starring you. The original King Kong encounter was given suspended trams and banana breath, and was turned into Kongfrontation. And the Fast and the Furious Extreme Close-Up was given benches and a re-theme, and was turned into Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. I really hope people get that joke. But while Skull Island, Reign of Kong, got additional show scenes and an animatronic finale, and Jaws the Ride got boats and an actual plot, Supercharged got a queue, and the challenge of fitting a story designed for Hollywood into a standalone attraction. That didn't go so well. To help better explain the plot of Supercharged, Universal added 2 small pre-show rooms to give the guests the illusion of a story that actually makes sense, and to pad out the runtime of this attraction. While they definitely don't do the storyline any favors, they do help me to defend this attraction. Defense 1. The people. When it comes to modern day theme park rides, the people working the attraction almost never serve a role outside of making sure everything is running safely and smoothly. While some places, such as Tower of Terror or Rise of the Resistance, give their cast members the opportunity to add a bit more character to their roles, their main job is still to make sure that the line is flowing and the attraction is running. Rides that let the cast members become a major part in the story, such as the Jungle Cruise, are next to non-existent nowadays, typically because these types of rides require more cast members to operate and have a slower output. As a result, there hasn't been a ride like this at Universal or Disney created since 1998. While Supercharged doesn't feature an actual team member driving your bus, it does feature 2 live characters acting as Pat and Jamie in the pre-show rooms. Since they're live people instead of actors on the screen or animatronics on the stage, they get to bring a level of personality and character to the role, something that just isn't seen in modern theme park rides nowadays. Much like any pre-show, there is a script that must be followed. The story beats need to be hit, no matter how confusing, or convoluted, or dumb the story might be. However, while the story beats can be hit, that doesn't mean that the performers can't have fun with the script.
Alright, Pat, let's get these people on their way. Send them over to the war room.
Alright, one question. Are you going to send me the details about the party?
Yes.
Are you going to ignore me? Okay, that's fine.
It's no secret that this ride is bad, and everybody is aware of it. As a result, the performers have been able to take the script and completely transform it, without altering a single line of dialogue.
You heard the man.
I did.
It's about to go to a whole nother level.
You mean prison?
Send everybody to the loading dock.
Great, alright.
While the script does have some jokes written into it, the delivery has been able to organically evolve into a much more self-aware pre-show. One that's aware this ride is bad, knows that you don't want to be riding it, and is going to have as much fun with that as possible.
Just got a heads up from Hobbs.
Oh, Hobbs is great!
The FBI is about to raid your location.
Wait, what?
Man, they always ruining our fun.
Every 3
It
minutes.
gets worse.
The performers aren't taking themselves or this show too seriously, and by showing that to the audience, it gives them the opportunity to see things the same way. After finishing up your pre-shows, you and your party walk out back to the loading dock to board your party bus. Defense 2, the party bus. It's got lights, it's got sounds, it's got hand holders. Arguably, it is the perfect ride vehicle, if not the greatest ride vehicle ever created. Okay, so honestly, the party bus isn't that great outside of like everybody overhyping it, but everything around the party bus does actually help me to better defend this ride. Defense 2, but for real, the sets. While the overall reception for Supercharged has been, well, you know. The one thing I've seen consistently praised about this ride is the queue and the sets. And it's not hard to see why. For a start, there are cool cars. Now, I'm not a car guy, nor somebody that's super knowledgeable about the Fast and the Furious franchise. But I gotta admit, the cars are cool. Plus, they're all cars from the movies, from Dom's iconic Charger to the orange Mazda from Tokyo Drift. Not only that, but there are Easter eggs and movie references galore. If you're a fan of the Fast and Furious films, you'll find tons of great Easter eggs, as well as a few loving tributes to the late Paul Walker. If you're still mad that this ride exists, there are plenty of wonderful tributes to the 2 attractions this ride needlessly bulldozed to make way for a giant building filled with nothing but boxes of screens and set. Sorry, I blacked out there for a moment. What was I talking about? Oh, right, the Easter eggs. Now, the Easter eggs don't stop at Fast and the Furious references or past attraction references. They extend to movies and other things in general. You can find references to Back to the Future, Harry Potter, and even Voodoo Donuts for some reason. Outside of just the Easter eggs, the sets are fantastic. The queue does a wonderful job of making you feel like Batman. Like you're in a garage in West LA. The loading dock sets and the first alleyway scene are phenomenally detailed and almost make you forget just how bad of a ride this is. Almost. So, what is it about this ride that made guests so dang unhappy? Well, for starters, this ride was yet another screen ride in the plethora of screen rides that already existed at the Universal parks. Compounding on this, the one element that didn't carry over from the Hollywood Tram Tour was that this ride wasn't in 3D. On the one hand, guests wouldn't have to deal with wearing annoying 3D glasses, but on the other, this meant that Universal Orlando could list the attraction as a thrill ride. Something that this ride definitely wasn't. Not only was it not thrilling, but guests felt ripped off because they were expecting and promised almost an experience much better than what they actually got. And in the middle of all of this outrage and controversy, Supercharged was able to do something incredible. Give me another reason to defend it. Defense 3. The Nail in the Coffin. Before Supercharged opened, many of Universal's newest attractions, such as Race Through New York starring Jimmy Fallon, or even Skull Island Reign of Kong, focused heavily on using screens to tell the story. Sure, your seat may be jostling and moving around some, but for many guests, the screen wasn't part of the ride, it was the ride. Those attractions had gotten mixed reviews in the past, but there was always something about them that could save them from being a complete flop. But with Supercharged, that something just wasn't there. Between the confusing story, incredible amount of screens put into it, the seemingly lack of effort put into it, and the fact that two phenomenal attractions were demolished to make way for this attraction, it created the perfect storm, one that actually seemed to reach Universal's ears. Following Supercharged, Universal decided to do something different. They started making good attractions again. Both Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure, long title, I know, and the Jurassic World Velocicoaster would go on to stand on their own as phenomenal roller coasters, each featuring unique elements, well-done stories, and a distinct lack of reliance on screens. On the opposite side of the states, Universal Studios Hollywood would retheme their Jurassic Park water ride to Jurassic World, as well as introduce a brand new dark ride, The Secret Life of Pets, Off the Leash. While these rides did use screens in them, the focus of the ride was now less about the screens and more on the story that was being told. Screens were no longer the ride, they were being used as a tool to help complement the story. Even when Universal dipped into the screen-based attraction pool, there was always something added to make sure that the screen wasn't the only focus. The Bourne Stuntacular, a show that opened in 2020, featured a massive screen as the backdrop for the entire show. But when combined with the physical set pieces, actors, stunts, and practical effects, the screen was able to elevate the show to new levels. Ones that wouldn't necessarily be possible without its inclusion. Supercharged was truly a low point in Universal's timeline of attractions. But because it flopped so hard, it was able to help put screens back in their place, as a tool, not as the entire story. In doing so, it managed to usher in a new golden age of Universal attractions, one that doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. So if Supercharged was such a flop, why is it still around all these years later? Well, obviously, the ride costs a lot of money to install, and it'd be such a shame to get rid of those party buses. But personally, the reason I think it's still around, and why it probably will be for a little while longer, is my last reason to defend it. Defense 4. Variety. Now, to fully understand this, we need to zoom out a little bit and look at the big picture. And I'm not talking in like some fancy metaphorical sense. I mean like, literally, on like a map. See, one of the biggest challenges that comes with building a theme park is giving your rides variety. Even in a place like Cedar Point, a theme park whose DNA is practically made up of roller coaster tracks, there are differences between each and every attraction, enough that no two rides feel identical. And in a place where your ride system is being used to tell a story, those differences and those similarities become even more noticeable. So let's say we wanted to remake Supercharged. We could keep the theme, but let's actually make it fast. Let's say turn it into some kind of roller coaster. We can still have the cast appear, maybe have them appear on like screen sections alongside the ride. Great idea! Only one problem is that ride opened 4 years ago. Right next door. In its own entire themed land. Okay, let's take the screens out then. We'll use animatronic figures instead. Possibly build it inside a building, so there's still sets that we can race through. Okay, the thing is, the Mummy is also right next door, and that opened back in, like, 2004, so, Okay, we'll scrap the coaster then. We can use some kind of motion simulator based instead. Maybe have like screens and set pieces to give the illusion of fast racing. Possibly throw in some like practical effects to give the illusion of movement. Okay, so what you're describing is the Transformers ride. And well, it's not next door, but it's still like right down the street. And all of a sudden, the ride system and what the ride turned out to be make a lot more sense. While I'm not trying to excuse Supercharged for being the way it is, I can also understand why it might have turned out the way it did. I wouldn't be surprised if this was Universal Creative trying to make a quick buck, but I could understand if this happened because there wasn't a better option available at the time. Look, I would love to see the Fast and Furious franchise get an attraction a film series of that level deserves. I would be overjoyed if they decided to tear down Supercharged and replaced it with something that was actually fast and or furious. If the rumors and the patents coming from Universal Creative lately are anything to go off of, that could happen sooner than we'd think, and I for one am all for that change. But until then, I'm still going to enjoy Supercharged. While yes, it is terrible, there's always going to be a part of me that loves it. Because, at the end of the day, it's fun to be part of family. No matter how dysfunctional, crazy, or stupid that family might turn out to be. I don't have an outro here, so I'm just like really mad about this train whistle. Shut up, please. Here we go, part 3. There's a train whistle in the background, so we're gonna try and make this quick so my phone doesn't also overheat. As opposed to just being static images on a screen. I really hope that didn't cut me off. While the overall reception is... I swear. And in the middle of all of this outrage and all the controversy about... Shut up. I'm going to sack this train. Okay, so what you're describing is the... You done? The original King Kong encounter was given suspended trams and banana breath, and became known as Kongfrontation. And the Fast and the Furious Extreme Close-Up... That was rude. Alright, one more time.